people are dead right now all across the United States of America, and nobody in the friggin' news is touching it. And the government's officially saying 10,000 are already dead. We got a major epidemic going to strike in the next 1 to 3 months as these kids return to school. You're going to see it in the schools. Major outbreaks of this flu. If you take that flu shot, you're dead. You're dead. I heard 9 out of 10 people, it's designed to kill you. You're going to die.
Just absolutely amazing that this country has sat so dormant for so long to watch all these criminals at play and allowed this to happen. It really is. It's embarrassing to me as an American that other citizens in this country don't take their vote seriously, and when they do, the votes are stolen. And there's just no demand. I mean, I look at this like back in the 70s when literally the people of the United States shut down the Vietnam War. It was the pressure of the people that closed off that war. And I don't see that now. I mean, you see people going broke, homeless in the street, losing their homes, under attack by these criminals, and you really don't see any of the same type of activity that we've seen, 30 years ago, And a lot of these criminals, what's bothering me is, are responsible for the death of a president. Okay, they literally murdered a president in Dallas.
Sure, George Herbert Walker Bush was standing in front of the book depository store 6 minutes after his death. What the hell was that bastard doing there? Mm-hmm. He was there at the party later at Clint Murchison's house, along with the other killers and assassins. They were all involved in it. Chichi Quintero, known as Chichi Rodriguez, were there. Others, because a friend of mine, Bill McCoy at Pentagon IG, tracked Chichi right down on the border in Canada. And he says, Bill, if you arrest me, he says, they'll kill your family tomorrow, and you'll be dead the next day. They'll kill your family. This is how serious. And you're right, they did murder the president. We've had two coups d'etats since by George Herbert Walker Bush. And that's one with the October surprise, Jimmy Carter election. And then, of course, in the year 2000 with Al Gore threatening and trying to kidnap his daughter and doing all the stuff that went on in that election. And the stolen ballots. We just reported on that in the last reports. We've reported on it several times. A federal grand jury actually brought charges and indictments over the voter fraud and the election fraud out of Georgia. And they killed the brother-in-law, a judge, of the judge who was going forth with the indictments. To shut him up and to silence him and scare the hell out of him. This is how they operate. So that never went anywhere. But you're right. We've got a dead president. We've got two that are supposed to be the president, supposedly were elected, but yet never served.
And the demons who they wanted to put fear in. I'll give you an example. Muammar Gaddafi. There's one, right? Remember him? They bombed Libya and this whole bit. Well, you know where he is now? He's the president of the African Union. Can you believe that they elected him the president of the African Union? What does that tell you about the Union?
I don't doubt that because, Chris, there's some things that I know about Ed Wilson because his private investigator was Bill McCoy. Bill was killed, good straight shooter, one of the best Iran-Contra investigators, should we say, those standing on top of the crime syndicate. Ed Wilson, he was Ed Wilson's private investigator. I'm familiar with Ed. He got out of jail here a while back, went on Nightline, and really spilled his guts. But, that he was the Libyan connection. And Larry, I'm trying to think of his name at the Justice Department, the one that set him up, knew and was aware of his activity. They needed a fall guy at the time because of the weapons that were sold and the tanks and all the other stuff that were sold to Israel and the various countries illegally, including Libya. EATSCO, it was called EATSCO. EATSCO was the name of the operation. And they shipped a lot of illegal weapons over to the Middle East. Bush profiteering once again off the U.S. taxpayers' back, George Herbert Walker Bush. So, I'm familiar with the Gaddafi situation and how they armed him, and then they take him down, just like Saddam Hussein. They armed him. They armed him up, then they take him down. They arm him up, then they take him down.
He was an evil access country, listed on the evil access, on the do not sell list, the embargo list, and nevertheless, they armed him anyway. They just broke the law and just sent him arms and sent him supplies anyway, regardless.
I got a question. Why isn't George Herbert Walker Bush executed because Saddam Hussein was for killing the Kurds with the biological agents? And Leonard Millman needs to be executed along with George Herbert Walker Bush, Neil Bush, and Jeb Bush because they were all involved. And it was called Iraqgate, where they sold those illegal weapons, shipped them through Britain, through Germany, Israel, over into the Middle East on German Mercedes-Benz trucks, 55-gallon containers that were shipped out of Colorado and out of Boca Raton, Florida, and the airport there, at a hangar that was owned by L. Millman, Leonard Millman, and N. Bush, as in Neil Bush, who was working for Millman at Silverado as a director, and Jeb Bush was in charge of the operation. And they contaminated the Colorado River, that contaminated Lake Mead and Lake Powell in Utah, and Lake Mead in Las Vegas, Nevada, with red tide that are killing fish, and the water's contaminated out there. And that was it was on the western slope in Colorado, in Fruita, Colorado, where it was made at the Sam Gary refinery. It was cyanide, HIV, hepatitis A, B, C, and anthrax combined. And Barbuti, a terrorist in Aqaba, Jordan, acting as a coffee merchant now, was the one that actually cocked up the combination for him that they sold as cherry juice. They called it cherry juice, Chris. And that's what they used in the Scud missiles that hit our troops during the first Gulf War and contaminated our troops, and many of them died, and they wouldn't look at the fact that these people had a combination of the anthrax, HIV, hepatitis A, B, C, and cyanide. And cyanide was the one thing that they began to find in common in a lot of these vets who died, was the cyanide poisoning. Saddam Hussein used those in the Scud missiles during Gulf War I. Now, George Herbert Walker Bush sold him those illegal weapons. First, it was called the Iraqgate scandal. Then it was called B&L Bank scandal, with Hillary on the board of directors laundering the money to B&L Bank in Chicago out of Parameter Transmission Oil Company, which is really top secret. They don't like that. I have the document up on my website in one of the breaking news pages, I think 3 or 4. And also, they turn around and they call it Gulf War syndrome. Saddam Hussein's been executed. I think George Herbert Walker Bush needs to be brought to trial, and Leonard Millman. Neil Bush.
I got a guest asking a question here. I think it's quite prevalent.
Yes.
They want to know where our gold and silver is.
We don't have any. We don't have a Fort Knox. It's got a bar or two in it. That's it. We haven't had a bank in years since the Federal Reserve took over in 1918 or 1913.
So who looted it?
Federal Reserve, 1933, said gold was illegal for Americans to own under the Emergency War Powers Act, 1933, and they took the gold. So we don't have any gold. America doesn't have anything. All we got is a paper screw. That's all the game is now.
I thought there was gold there. Why?
No. A few bars, and that's it. Now, Chris, I guess we're just about out of time, aren't we?
We are almost about out of